Without resorting to Google, do you know the difference between equity and equality? I'll give you a second. Well, James Racine wants to ensure we all do. He joins us this morning as he has weekly over the past month. James, I mean, I feel like every time you're on with us, I get caught unawares once again. I'm definitely somebody, I mean, my degrees are in English.
Right.
I thought that I knew what equity versus equality actually mean, but there you want to make sure that we all understand what that means. But before we do, you've been on the
Mhm,
show. We've
mhm.
appreciated you taking the time, and we've gotten quite a bit of feedback from viewers who appreciate the conversation and also that you allow for some back and forth. And we've read viewers' questions and you've given some sound advice. But I would say perhaps one of the most resounding things that you've said here
Mhm.
was trying to help people understand. And I'm going to let you explain this about when we're talking about Black Lives Matter.
Mhm.
And you likened that to whether you're left-handed or
Mhm.
right-handed. Will you
Mhm.
share that again? Because people have written in saying, aha, thank you. I finally get it.
Right, right, and so going back to that, Angie, and I was basically talking about the Black life, right, in America, and so if you're right-handed, so I do this exercise in the workshops that I facilitate, and ask folks who are right-handed to raise their hands, right, and I proceed to ask them, well, how many times during the day do you think about yourself being right-handed, right? And usually I don't get any hands, maybe one person, right? Then I ask the folks who are left-handed to raise their hand, and usually you have a few. And then I ask those folks, well, how many times during the day does it hit you? Do you think about being left handed? Right? And they raise their hand and they say all the time. And that's because everything is set up, right, for right handed folks. Everything is set up, when you're talking about door handles, keyboards, phones, cars, etc., everything, right? But not for left handed folks. So it's a little uncomfortable, right? And so that is the life of marginalized folks in America.
And that's something that, I mean, has really stuck with people.
Right,
So,
right. And that goes along with microaggressions. So that when I say
yes,
repeated and frequent, that's how much is hitting you left and right during the day.
you're just completely conscious and
Hmm.
aware of that.
Absolutely.
Now, let's turn the tables to equality
Right.
versus equity.
Right.
What does equality mean?
Equality means basically everybody gets a shirt, right? And so when you look at comment sections and people are debating, first of all, we need to go from debate to dialogue. We'll talk about that later. But folks are debating. Well, everyone gets something. When we talked about the blackout Tuesday that happened, so were you shopping with black businesses? Well, people say you should shop all businesses, right? So equality versus equity, this idea of everyone gets a shirt, but equity is everyone gets a shirt that fits, right? Or giving everybody some insulin. Inequality is equality. Giving only people who are diabetic some insulin is equity, right? And so this idea now in America is, Angie, if we were doing a race, right, a foot race, and I let you have 400-year head start, right? We need equity. I need equity to be able to get to that point where we can be equal. Does that make sense? Because if we're just equal, there's no way that I can ever have success.
That does make sense. Going back to the analogy of giving everybody insulin, I don't
Hmm.
need it,
Right.
but someone who's diabetic would need it. And once they have it, then we can function the,
Absolutely.
the
So
same.
now you go back to marginalized folks in this country, in this world, right? There are certain things that they need to even get on that same level playing field as everyone else.
Why is it important for us to know that difference between equality and equity?
We need understanding because, as I told you last week, we're very defensive people, right? We're human, right? We're going to defend our good intentions, right? We want to be equal all the time. So, without that good understanding about equity versus equality, we'll never get it, and we'll continue to debate and debate and debate instead of going towards progress and having dialogue and understanding how can we help each other in this sense.
And I think there's a lot of people who want to know, how do we move forward? I mean, we seem to be at a standstill almost, and are
Hmm.
seeing some very distressing things. And I mean, and I think rightfully so. There are people who are expressing, I mean, when can we all get back to the quote unquote normal? Because that's a safe thing.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
we want that what we had, but we also have the cries saying we can't go back there.
Right, right, exactly. We can't, we absolutely cannot go backwards. We need to go forward, and that's with dialogue. We need to stop debating, right? Dialogue is collaborative, right? Debate is oppositional, right? So you need to kind of step away from your own beliefs for a second and listen. We need to listen and respond bravely. That's how we make progress.
Now you use a when you're doing, your workshops and things, you use a parable about the giraffe and the elephant. Will you share that?
Right. And so this idea, and you hear that a lot where you tell people, well, you fix yourself, right? So this parable is this notion of this giraffe has a house and he's looking outside and this buddy of his, an elephant, is walking by. He said, hey, come on in. This elephant needed a place to stay for a little bit. So the elephant, I mean, the elephant puts his head through the door and that's it. He can't really get in. And so the giraffe said, what's the matter? What's going on? I just can't get through the door. So the giraffe then expands the door, right? And lets the elephant in, right? So they're chit chatting, they're having a good time, and the giraffe said, well, make yourself at home, right? And so the elephant tries to go upstairs, and the floor starts to crack, right? And he's destroying things. And so the giraffe said, what's the problem? He says, well, I can't really go up the steps. So the giraffe says, well, you should go to the gym. You should try to lose some weight, right? You should try to do something. And so the idea is continuing, everything, something happens. The giraffe is telling the elephant, well, you should change. And that's what we're doing in America. We're telling, we're telling folks who are marginalized, who are living in a country that wasn't really built considering them, they need to change instead of changing the way we do things, changing our spaces, changing our communities, changing our education, right? When we're looking at curriculum in schools, right? We have a problem in making sure that we have an Afrocentric curriculum as well. We're telling people to do things on their own instead of changing the spaces and the communities that they live in.
Now we're talking also about moving forward.
Hmm.
So there's an awful lot of debate, an
Right,
awful lot of debate.
right.
Whether, I mean, I can't think of a day in the recent several months
Hmm.
where I haven't seen a social media post about I've deleted friends,
Right,
family. I'm no
absolutely.
longer having relationships with people because we're over here and over here.
Right.
How do we move conversations so that it's no longer debate, but it's true dialogue?
True dialogue, right, right. We have to have dialogue, right? And so, and you're going to have controversy, right? But you need to have that with civility, right? When we're talking about civil discourse, ownership of intent and impact, right? And so we really got to, now you can defend your good intentions later, right? But you need to understand, stop and think about the impact that when you're talking about losing family and friends, the impact of the things that you're saying on these friends and close ones, right? Challenge by choice with reflection. We have to slow down and reflect. And pointed challenges. Now, we also have to be very mindful of true source of emotions, right? We're very emotional people. And we have to think about that impact that it has on people. Now, I don't know if we shared this last week on how to deal with when these microaggressions are happening. Shared the acronym being a deer, right? And where you affirm the personal relationship. Okay, so that's your cousin, family member, friend, colleague, whatever. Describe the behavior without judgment, right? Just describe it. Explain the emotion and impact, right? In your filters, right? We talked about lens. We all have our perspective, how we view things, right? Assume positive intent, okay? And then request or suggest a different behavior. If you do these things, not necessarily in that order, but I really suggest that order, then that's when we can move to dialogue instead of debate.
That absolutely makes sense. James, will you stick around for the continuing the conversation a little bit later
Absolutely.
in the show?
Absolutely.
Okay, coming up, we'll have more with James Racine from Identity Diversity Solutions.